This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. We also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 18th of November 2020 and I am Miss K.
I'm Tom.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines this morning, here they are. In the Daily Nation, school fees pinch in 4-term years. In the Standard, the wailing governor. And in the Star, BBI clash. Uhuru Raila launch a signature drive. Let's begin with the Standard.
Absolutely, the wailing governor, and oh my goodness, Governor Mike Sonko has been on a series of online rants against Uhuru Kenyatta and the NMS boss Buddy. And this week, this man on his social media account posted, "Jail me, there is life in prison. Impeach me. There is life after politics. Kill me. There is life after death." And he also likes taking on the NMS boss Buddy. But I also want to tell the nation this. JM, you and I today went to see our new mass transit system. And Lord, it is looking fantastic. It's looking good. But what has shocked me is the level of organization NMS has actually planned. That within a month, that eyesore of a bus terminus called railways will disappear, and a whole new BRT system will begin functioning, and the matatus will be pushed all the way to railways. Now I want to ask a question. Do you think that a man called Mike Sonko had the mental capacity of thinking of that move? He absolutely did not have any ingenuity in creating a mass transit system for Nairobi. For example, this mass transit system can do about 300,000 people every single day. By the way, every single evening and every single morning, over 1 million people come from the fringes of Nairobi to Nairobi and also leave in the evening. The same 1 million people. You need a system that is so well organized to move all these people around. Mike Sonko is incapable of thinking that way. And I also want to say the following. Can you imagine the current wheelbarrow barons take power together with Sonko? How will this city of ours look like? Upper Hill and Westlands, in 1 week, will look like Githurai. People will be
full of
mkokotenis and wheelbarrows.
People.
You'll have boda bodas entering buildings and just zooming past 9th floor. It was absolute chaos.
That's the wailing governor, and I really think there's a strong contender for our winning headline.
Yes,
let's move on to the Nation. School fees.
School fees pinch in 4-term years. There's something off about that headline. However, the story is about parents who will feel the pinch as they go into 2021 and 2022. The normal school year has 3 terms, but the Ministry of Education has tried to propose ways in which they can help the students catch up from what they lost out this year. But this will have an impact on parents. So if the school year moves from 3 terms to 4 terms, there'll be 8 terms within the next 2 years. Someone will have to foot that cost of those extra terms, and currently that bill has been landing squarely on top of the parents. Parents are also feeling the pinch of having to pay additional costs such as masks, sanitizers for their students as they go in towards school. The parents' lobby has signaled that to petition the government to raise the free school fees and the free primary and secondary school allocation and negotiate a grace period for settling of the fee arrears because they also are suffering at work. All I can say is that everyone is between a rock and a hard place. Really.
Having eaten school fees.
Ms. K, are you blaming parents?
I'm not blaming parents. No one ate school fees. There was Corona. The kids stayed home. Now, what do we do? There really is nothing I can say about this headline except hang in there, parents.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know. Should we toss that?
Toss it.
I think we should toss it.
Toss that one. Okay, let me toss the Daily Nation. And in the Star, BBI clash, Uhuru Raila launch signature drive. I would actually have rephrased this completely and just say Ruto bitten into submission, which he has been. He's been wailing as well.
He's been wailing
in the public, saying, "Why can't they take my comments? Why are they closing the window for comments?" This is what they're saying here. Ruto,
the wailing deputy.
Absolutely. So the showdown, they're speculating in the Star, is about to begin. Uhuru and Ruto, Uhuru and Raila are about to kick off the signature collection drive.
Yes.
They speculate that this is supposed to be held on Thursday.
Yeah.
The BBI secretariat has already been put in place. It's being driven by some diehards.
Yes.
There's a Madam Kilemi.
Yes.
There's Janet Ongera.
Yes.
Junet Mohammed. Dennis Waweru.
Yes.
Yes.
These are the people who are going to be coordinating the drive and percolating it downwards to Kenyans.
Yes.
We're also told that the bill is due to be published
Yeah.
in no time now, probably tomorrow. Maybe even it's been published today. And once that's done, it's pretty much set in stone for this phase.
Yeah.
And that's what will now be the document that people collect signatures against.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the long and short of it. Ruto is in a pretty hard place right now.
Yeah.
In terms of should he support, should he not support
Yeah.
the BBI bill.
Yeah.
Because he's in government, so if he attempts to go against it,
Yes.
it's not going to look very good.
Absolutely.
But if he supports it,
Yeah.
which he should,
Yeah.
then it'll take away the oomph from what he's been,
Absolutely. Yeah.
from his campaign so far.
Yes.
I would say we toss the star.
Toss the star.
Okay, I don't want to pollute the pieces we call cartoons in this country. We ask, are they humorous or dry, satirical, pessimistic, ineffective, or just plain lazy? Let's begin with the Daily Nation.
The Daily Nation have Ndula and a caricature of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and it's around the corner with General Badi. But just on the other side of the corner, you have Mike Sonko placing, is that a mugshot, a wanted sign of General Badi, a wanted ad. And the ad reads, Saddam Hussein Badi, beware, considered efficient, timely in service delivery. And I could not agree more.
Yeah.
And JM, there's something we learn Political Economy 101. Henry Hazlitt says that if you do not pay tax, you should not vote. What am I saying here? The reason we get the Sonkos and other guys, in leadership is because we have allowed the masses to go and vote directly for people that are mediocre.
Absolutely.
It's the long and short of it.
And the masses are ignorant
yes,
people.
they are fickle. Now, if you have a general who can do in just 6 months what an entire county government should have done from 2013, then do we really need democracy in this country?
No, and in fact, there's something called democratic fatigue syndrome that we've read about in one of our final thought segments.
Yeah.
And that's what that author was speaking about precisely, and that's what Kenyans are experiencing.
Yeah.
The fact that we keep electing these politicians who always let us down. And 80% of them go home after every election cycle.
Yeah.
That in itself is a sign that we as the electorate don't have a lot of faith in the people that we elect.
Yeah.
And so we go through the election cycle as a routine, but we don't really believe in its power to transform our lives.
Absolutely.
47 governors, for 47 generals for 47 counties. That's what we need, a bit of dictatorship.
Absolutely.
At least for a season, so that we get back on track, we do course correction.
Yes.
And then we can go back to electing.
And rethink this democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to, I think that's a strong contender.
I agree.
Let's move on to the Standard.
I think this is a nod to the Daily Nation's headline story, and it's a caricature of two students, a boy and a girl, each carrying a mountain, a heap of books, and wearing masks and coughing. And I think it's describing the state in which the students will be going back to school next year. They have so much catching up to do, 4 terms in a school year, and also there's still the threat of COVID-19. We don't know if they'll get it while they're there, and then we go back to ground zero, start again. I think it's sad, it's pessimistic. I want to toss it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
And boring too.
Very boring.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, Gado.
Let's consider the cartoon of the star. Here we have the CS for Health, Mutai Kagwe, and he's leaning over this ship that's been. It's an NHIF ship, and he's reaching out for the what do you call this?
Is it a vaccine?
A vial.
This lifeline.
Lifeline, yes.
Over there, and then you've got some hands out there showing that people are drowning.
Yeah.
And there's 2 floating vaccines by Pfizer and Moderna.
Yeah.
And I suppose these are the companies that are leading the campaign to generate a vaccine. And he seems to be reaching out for Pfizer. He is desperate for a lifeline for Kenyans.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, it's just an okay cartoon.
Just an okay
I
cartoon.
think in the context of the cartoon of the Daily Nation,
Yes.
perhaps we could give it the winning cartoon.
Daily
Yes,
Nation.
definitely.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, fantastic. The winning cartoon from the Daily Nation. And now, on to the final thought. But before we get there, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So what is our final thought?
And now our final thought, it is inspired by a book entitled Marconi, The Man Who Networked the World by Mark Raboy.
Mark Raboy is a media historian, and he writes a biography of Guglielmo Marconi, the father of radio. I'd like to begin this by giving a context to the man who wrote the book, and speaking about an event that was the origin of wireless communication as we know it. On 12th December 1896, Guglielmo Marconi wowed a group of people in London with the demonstration of wireless communication across a room.
Yes.
Sounds like something small right now, but 5 years later, on the same date, 12th December 1901, Marconi sent the first signal across the ocean. The first successful transatlantic radio broadcast was a Morse code transmission from England to Newfoundland. I know we don't think of that as anything, but at that time, the ability to receive those little dots and spaces across the Atlantic was a major, major discovery. In fact, Marconi had done this by focusing on physics. He was inspired by his neighbor, who was a physics professor, to look at the works of Hertz. And Hertz was known as the father of radio waves, and now Marconi moved that into radio waves, and he received the world's first patent for a system of wireless telegraphy. He founded what then would become Marconi's Wireless Telegraph Company in 1896 and opened the world's first factory in England for the manufacture of radios. By that act of sending those dots and stops across the Atlantic, Marconi showed that it was practical to have a worldwide wireless communication system. And in 1909, because of that work, he shared the Nobel Peace Prize for Physics with Carl Ferdinand Braun of Germany, whose modifications of Marconi's transmitters made them strong enough to be practical for what we now today call radio communication. I'd like to speak about Marconi's prolific nature as an inventor. He's said to have predicted the advent of radar in a lecture that he gave to the American Institute of Radio Engineers in 1922. And his own research progressed from shortwave radio to microwaves. And in 1932, he opened the world's first microwave radio telephone link that connected Vatican City with the Pope's summer palace in Castel Gandolfo. Apart from being a prolific inventor, Marconi was also a political character. He was an active supporter of Mussolini, Mussolini's fascist government, and Mussolini awarded him in 1929 the noble title of Marquess. And when Marconi died in 1937, Mussolini gave him a state funeral. But a fun fact, he came from money. Marconi was the son of an Italian country gentleman and Irish whiskey heiress, Anne Jameson. And in spite of having a moneyed mother, he was also worth his own worth. In fact, he had so much money, the equivalent of several $100 million today, that an international conference was convened in 1903 for the sole purpose of discussing his unchecked powers of patent. Marconi leaves behind a great legacy and pushed forward radio technology in a way that nobody else did. Something to remember.
You know, for one who was so powerful and created all these radio systems, he had such a sensitive heart. Do you see all the letters he wrote to his girlfriend?
Allow him his little quirks.
Now, this man called Marconi had 9 lives. Now, did you know that he actually survived the Titanic shipwreck and also saved the survivors? But he wasn't actually on the ship itself. Now, Marconi had been invited to travel on the inaugural voyage of the Titanic, which actually used his radios. He really wanted to see how it worked, but unfortunately, he had work to do. So he opted instead to take a voyage known as a Lusitania, 3 days before the Titanic's doomed voyage. Now, again, as I said earlier, if it was not for Marconi, over 700 Titanic survivors would not have been found. The wire system he had designed sent out distress calls, and that's how he had designed it. Now, a ship called the Carpathia received these distress calls, and it immediately turned and steamed 60 miles towards Titanic's given position, a journey of almost 4 hours. Now, then Postmaster General, British Postmaster General, a man known as Herbert Samuel, said that those who had been saved have been saved through one man, Mr. Marconi, and his marvelous invention. And I also want to speak about his, as you said, Ms. Kay, about his relationship with Marco Mussolini. Now, he had actually been admitted into the fascist party of Benito Mussolini. But Benito Mussolini also made him the president of the Royal Academy of Italy. Now, it is rumored that Mussolini and Marconi were so close that it was rumored that Mussolini was his best man, and at his second wedding. But in reality, Mussolini had to send his regrets on account of all the dictating he had to do, but also on account of the 9 lives this Marconi man had. Do you know he actually survived 9 heart attacks?
Wow. 9 heart attacks. Amazing.
Yes.
Let me speak a little bit about his legacy.
Yeah.
And this is what Degna Marconi said about her father. This is Marconi's daughter. She said, "My father had a foot in both centuries." And that's the 19th and the 20th century. By tradition and breeding, he was a man of the 19th century. It showed in the formality of his manners, the impeccability of his dress, indeed. We see that. And the reticence behind which he walled his personal self.
Yeah.
Intellectually and temperamentally, he was of the 20th century, and his genius shaped it, and it was very much to his taste. But the author goes a little further, and he adds his own observation. And he says, Marconi was the father of wireless technology, and for him, impossible was nothing. Impossible was nothing here, being my own addition to what the author is saying. And so the author said, Marconi was also of the 21st century, and his genius, if that's what it is, lay in making connections through technology, personal networking, and harnessing the potential of existing knowledge. From time to time, he came out to the press following the demonstration of a magic box in London in 1896. And he was surrounded always by this aura of mystery and myth, and the belief as well that humankind could really pioneer advances in this area of technology and communication. In short, he was really a man ahead of his time, and he saw all the advancements that could be made despite what other inventors in his era thought. And so he accomplished quite a bit. He's a father of perhaps even Wi-Fi.
Absolutely.
He is, and he saw Wi-Fi from as far back as those days in the early 1900s.
I also think, as you mentioned, about his far-reaching and think that sometimes an inventor does not see the end use or the interpretation that the world takes of their invention.
Yes.
Marconi himself, when he was inventing the radio, saw it as a good way to communicate two-way, similar in the way that we do with a telephone. But he did not see the entertainment potential of his device and even its ability to control the masses and people. And that's an interesting take on what happens sometimes when you invent something, it spirals and takes on a life of its own, unintended consequences.
Precisely. But for Marconi, impossible was nothing. And on that account, I want to leave you with a French proverb that says, to believe a thing impossible is to make it so. So don't believe things to be impossible. Today we had a winning headline from the Standard and a winning cartoon from the Daily Nation. Yes, toss those. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on your TV screens, free to air, Star Times and Go TV.